John McCain's home state of Arizona will say farewell to the senator today, shortly before he makes his final trip to Washington. Thousands waited in line yesterday outside Arizona's state capitol to view McCain's casket and pay their respects to his family. A military honor guard kept a silent vigil over the casket overnight. A bipartisan group of senators will attend today's service, and speakers will include former Vice President Joe Biden. Nancy Cortez has more on the emotion surrounding the ceremonies.
I really feel like he did a good job trying to work across the aisle, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, he's my dad.
Oh, really?
Jack, James, Doug, and Sidney McCain, in mourning themselves, shook hands and talked with well-wishers who never met their father. 12 to 15,000 people stood in line to say goodbye to John McCain well into the night. Constituents who saw him as more than just a politician.
Actually, it's got me more emotional than I thought.
Vietnamese Americans showed up in force to honor the former POW. Derek Nguyen came with a group of 100 from California.
When he was in Little Saigon, we praised him that this is a hero. And he said, "No, I'm not a hero. I'm in a company of heroes."
Earlier in the day, an intimate ceremony for the family and close colleagues after the casket was escorted to the Capitol.
Imagining Arizona without John McCain is like picturing an Arizona without the Grand Canyon. It's just not natural. We ask for an added measure of thy spirit to be with John's sweet family, who have sacrificed so much for so long in sharing their loving husband and father with us.
Today, the tears will be mixed with laughter as the straight-talking senator is eulogized by close friends, like local Latino activist Tommy Espinoza. What was the source of your bond?
You know, you get around John McCain, and, you know, he's always in motion. You know, he's always thinking, you know, he's on top of stuff. And that energy I loved, you know, when I was around him.
Nancy Cortez is outside the North Phoenix Baptist Church. So, Nancy, take us through what's going to be taking place today with the memorial service.
Well, this particular church has been chosen in part, Anne-Marie, because it can accommodate thousands of people, and they have set aside about 1,000 seats for the general public. So you'll see a mix of close friends and family members and just regular Arizonans who want to come and pay their respects as well. About a quarter of the U.S. Senate will be in attendance. They're flying out here together to be able to pay their respects as well. And I think that something important to keep in mind during this service is the fact that everything that you will see and hear was hand-selected by John McCain himself, right down to the hymns, down to the musical selections. My Way, one of his favorite songs, sung by Frank Sinatra, will be playing at the end of the ceremony. Several of his very close friends, including Vice President Joe Biden, will be speaking. And so I think you'll hear a very different tone from the more somber tone that we saw yesterday, very formal at the rotunda of the state capitol. Here, sure, there will be a lot of sadness, but there will also be a lot of laughter as they recount this very unique man and you know, and his personality, how full of life he was, from some of the people who knew him the best and the longest. Biden himself knew John McCain and traveled with him around the world long before McCain was ever a senator. They were senators together, but before that, McCain was the Navy's liaison to the U.S. Senate, and in that capacity, he traveled with a young Senator Joe Biden all around the world.
Yeah, I'm sure Joe Biden has a lot of stories to tell. Some hopefully he'll share today. Others I'm sure he's sharing in private. It's been nearly a week, though, since Senator McCain passed away. And you've been covering his passing and the reaction to his passing. What has stood out to you about the sort of overwhelming show of support from his home state in Arizona?
I think one of the things that was really surprising to me yesterday is that I expected, of course, a lot of his former constituents to want to come and pay their respects at the state capitol. And there were about 12 to 15,000 people who filed through the rotunda, but so many of them were not from Arizona. We met people from California. We met people from Las Vegas who had made this long drive simply because they believed in him, they believed in his brand of politics, they admired him on a personal level, the way that he conducted himself. And I thought that that was very unusual. It's just an outpouring that you really would not see for most politicians, and people were quite overcome as they came out of that rotunda, just from the experience of being able to say goodbye in close quarters. And so I think that was something that really stuck with me. Certainly Arizonans saw him as a native son and as one of them, but he's someone who belonged to the nation. And I'll tell you another thing, Anne-Marie, there were probably just as many Democrats yesterday as Republicans who filed through that rotunda. So you had people from across the political spectrum who wanted to pay their respects, and I think that really says something about the man as well.
Yeah, indeed. So what is next, though, following today's services?
Well, there will be a transfer ceremony at the Phoenix airport today to return his body to Washington, D.C., where he will then lie in state tomorrow in the U.S. Capitol. You'll see much the same. People who were not his constituents at all, but just people from around the Washington, D.C. area. And certainly all of the staffers who he worked with over the years will want to come and file through the U.S. Capitol and pay their respects. Then on Saturday, what is likely to be a pretty astounding collaboration of people wishing him farewell at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Former President Barack Obama, former President George W. Bush, Henry Kissinger, just a long line of luminaries who once again were hand-selected by John McCain. He asked them months ago if they would be willing to speak at his memorial service. So that will be quite an event at the National Cathedral. And then the following day, he will be laid to rest at his beloved U.S. Naval Academy on a hill where years ago, one of his close friends, Chuck Taylor, actually set aside 4 plots because he knew that he would want to be buried near his friend, John McCain.
Wow, it's all bound to be incredibly moving. Nancy Cordes, thank you.